ahead and just confirm if you have a name on the screen, that name is correct, and tell me who you're representing here today, whether you're a neighboring property owner, someone else from the community, the applicant, or the owner on the project. So I'll start with the folks in the room. We have Peter Koenig. Mr. Koenig, do you want to introduce yourself and your client?
Yes, my name's Peter Koenig, Koenig. Hi, Bill. Hi, Megan. Nice to see both of you. I'm with the law firm of Beekner, Haffer, Myers and Koenig, also known as BHMK Law. We're at 221 East 4th Street, Atrium 2 Office Tower, Cincinnati 45202. And with me is Ryan Pearson, longtime architect with Edge, and has done a lot of work with Hallmark here in Cincinnati. And Ryan will be handling our portion of the hearing for the most part.
Okay.
PEARS.
Landscape architect.
Huh?
Landscape architect, not an architect.
Oh, licensed landscape architect.
Got it. Okay, great. I see that we have a Megan Smith here. Megan, if you could unmute.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
Okay, so your name is Megan Smith, and
yes.
How are you connected to the project, if at all?
I wouldn't say connected to the project. I'm the senior director of real estate for the University of Cincinnati, which we're up all over in Uptown.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Bill Crawford, I believe. If you could unmute.
Bill, you have to unmute.
Yeah, Bill, we can't hear you. There's a little microphone icon in the bottom left of the Zoom screen.
What's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Bill Crawford. I am the president of the Coreyville Community Council. Okay. And that's the neighborhood in which this project will be in.
Okay.
Is it possible to turn that up a little bit?
Unfortunately, it's not. Okay. That's what took us so long. It's trying to work on that volume. And there's just some technical difficulties. So,
all right.
If you'd like, we could. I think the sound is coming out of the TV. If you want to get closer, we can try and move you a little closer.
I'll see if I need to. I will.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Great. Okay. Welcome everyone. I think we're ready to get started. I need to read through the hearing script. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. We also have Trey Sheldon here. He is from the City Planning Department and prepared a staff report for this particular application. So I'm going to read through our hearing script. This will just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll begin. So this is the September 10th, 2025 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. Again, my name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20250080. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any other parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any other party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. For our purposes here today, this will be an opportunity for Mr. Koenig and his client to tell us about the project, the relief that they're requesting, and of course, why they believe that relief is appropriate. I'll then turn it over to the public. If Ms. Smith or Mr. Crawford would like to add any comments or testimony at that time, I will give you that opportunity after the applicant has presented its case. Because the applicant is represented by an attorney, Mr. Koenig can ask questions of the public if he would like after their testimony. I'll then turn it over to our zoning plans examiner, Trey Sheldon from the planning department, to provide any testimony in addition to his staff report. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to that testimony offered in opposition in rebuttal. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. In the event of any technical difficulties with our Zoom setup here, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those issues on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, I'm going to collectively swear all of those people in at the same time right now. So if you could just raise your right hand, I'll need you, if you're on Zoom, to be off mute. I'll need everyone to answer out loud. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thanks everyone. Looks like we have someone else trying to join. Cassandra, are you still with us? All right, is there a David Taylor here? Okay, we'll wait as David Taylor tries to get connected, but we're already running pretty far behind. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the applicant. Mr. Koenig, if you're ready to proceed, as you know, I'm pretty liberal about how you want to orient your presentation. So if you want to make some opening statements or direct examine your client, however you want to orient it, the floor is yours. And
I appreciate it. We're ready to go. I'm going to turn it over to my witness in just a minute. I'll just give you an overview. This property is essentially an extension of the previously approved and built out University Edge project. It's in the Coreyville Community District. It is a commercial neighborhood mixed zoning district. It's also in the transportation corridor zoning district to the east. The surrounding properties, maybe Ryan could talk about them when we get to it. And we appreciate the staff report that's dated August 28th. We think it's accurate and we support it. The only thing I would add to it is I met with Mr. Crawford and the board of the Coreyville Community Council twice. I met with them initially on February 4, 2025 at their office in the church building up there in Coreyville. I met with them again on August the 5th. There was a good number of people there. I think it was 7 people each time. Lots of questions were asked. We met for well over an hour each time, and there were very few changes were made from February 4th until August the 5th. And by August the 5th, we had already filed our application. We filed it in July, on July 21st. I believe maybe it got filed on the couple of days later, but I dated it the 21st, and that is the plan. So the plan before you today is the plan that Mr. Crawford and his board at the Coreyville Community Council have seen twice so far this year. That's about it. It is, and that's the only thing that's not really in the staff report. We're requesting special exceptions and a variance. 2 special exceptions. 1 exception is because 60% of the building facade is supposed to be built to the front lot line to allow approximately 60% of the building facade to be built plus or minus 8 feet from the building line. Ryan will talk about that special exception that we need. And then there's a buffer yard is normally required to be 10 feet rather, required to be 15 feet. And we're requesting a 10-foot buffer. We're putting extensive landscaping in there, a copious amount of landscaping that can be discussed. I know that Mr. Crawford, on a personal level, owns a number of the properties to the east or north of that property line. The pedestrian sidewalk will be consistent with the buildings in the previous stages of University Edge. It's a 2-building project. There's a building A and a building B. Let me start with building B. It's a 3-story multifamily building, has approximately 6,000 square feet. Building A is a mid-rise 5-story building, 129 unit, multifamily, probably student housing building, total floor area of approximately 286,000 square feet with a number of different layouts.
Mr. Koenig, how many units did you say were in building B?
Building B has only 3 units. It's a small building. Unfortunately, there is a holdout property that the client, Hallmark Communities, was not able to acquire. Hallmark subsidiary is called Kettering Lofts LLC. That's the owner of the property. And there is a tattoo parlor. So we have to wrap around that building, which is unfortunate, but we don't have the power of eminent domain. I think I would just turn it over to Ryan. He's been sworn in. He can give the testimony and walk you through our plans in some detail. Ryan,
Sure.
why don't you go ahead?
Can I approach the board?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to, as you do that, I'm going to share screen
Okay.
here to try to make sure that the folks online can see exactly what we're referencing here. So if you'll just give me a minute. Mr. Crawford or Ms. Smith, could you confirm that you can see the plans here on the screen now, on your screen?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, it's 129 units total. So 3 units in that northern building B, and then there's 126 in the larger building or larger piece of the site. So we have this board just to show the context and how it really relates or fits into primarily that phase 1, and I call it phase 1 and phase 2 of University Edge to the north. As part of that zoning process, we were granted a special exception on the frontage on University Edge along Jefferson Avenue. And I think what we're proposing is very similar. It's set back a little bit further than the University Edge phase 1, but there's reasoning for that, and I'll get into that. The other thing is on the east side of that property line, we were granted a 10-foot or a 5-foot special exception to reduce that buffer yard from 15 to 10. And as part of those discussions, it was really to try to maximize the parking for that phase 1 project. If we didn't have the additional 5 feet, then we lost the entire row of parking along the eastern property line. So the neighborhood community, the Quarryville Community Council at that time supported that reduction in the buffer yard. And I would say that the 5-foot reduction of 15, we can still provide planting in that 10-foot zone, and I think achieve a similar, if not maybe more impactful buffer by increasing the planting, and that's some details we'll get into as well. So I think what we're asking for is very, very consistent. The other piece that I want to add is, as Peter mentioned, there was a holdout with the tattoo parlor in the middle of the site. It's creating all 3 of these requests, or at least impacting how we can lay out the site. So first of all, in order to get that building frontage along Jefferson, obviously we needed to have the 2 buildings just because we could not join the 2. Second, the depth of that lot also comes into play with how we can lay out the parking in the back in the garage. So the way this site is set up is it falls off from Jefferson being the high point, falls off about 20 feet to the east. And what the proposed building is showing is we have 2 levels of parking that are taking up that 20 feet on the east side of the building. And then the 5 stories of residential above that we call it a podium level over the parking. So essentially, once you get to Jefferson Avenue, it'll appear like a 4 or 5 story building. So that's that piece of it, and you can see it a little bit better in some of these other exhibits that we've provided. That the parking, and I don't know if the folks on the virtual can see this, but we have kind of a buff color right at the back of the tattoo parlor or the tattoo lot.
Ryan, just so the record's clear, you're now directing attention to Exhibit C.
The one that's on the board or on their screen, yeah.
Exhibit E.
Exhibit E. Let's see.
So that buff color is really the parking garage underneath where the residential building footprint would land. And we are holding that just a few feet off of that property line. There are some grades in there that we're gonna have to work with, but just the dimension of, an 18-foot parking space, 24-foot drive aisles, or 22, I think is what we're using here to try to compress that east-west dimension as much as we can. It starts to set it up to where if we were to live by the standard of the 15-foot, we would have to reduce the size of that parking garage, which means we would lose two levels of parking along that eastern property line. And I think, so per code, we're not required any parking because of that transportation overlay.
Right.
However, what we've currently shown is more like, I think it's closer to 0.5 per bed.
Right, the ratio is about 0.5. Ryan,
So about a 0.5
while we're
per
on
bed
this
ratio.
topic, you explained to the hearing examiner how many curb cuts we're eliminating, what we're doing to consolidate the access
Sure.
point for both University Edge and the new project we call Kettering.
Yeah, and so if I flip back to that existing aerial, currently there's a curb cut just north of the laundromat where you have, it's a retaining wall that's anywhere from 4 feet on the western side to, I think it might be about 8 feet tall by the time you get to the middle of the site along that south property line. There's a curb cut right here that enters or accesses all of the parking for the existing building. There's also a second curb cut between the two converted single-family houses. They're converted into apartments currently. So there's a second curb cut in here. And with what we're proposing, we eliminate both of those curb cuts. And so we would eliminate the curb cut that's right here. We would eliminate the curb cut between the two existing buildings, and we would maintain the existing curb cut for University Edge Phase 1.
So essentially,
So
we're eliminating 2 full curb cuts, one of which has very poor line of sight because it's near the curve as you come around where the laundromat is. And we're eliminating 2 curb cuts and combining the access point for parking for University Edge and Kettering
on an existing.
in the existing curb cut.
And I think all of that goes to that CNM zoning district of trying to encourage and enhance that pedestrian experience along the public streets, hiding parking, eliminating or reducing curb cuts as much as we can, pulling that building towards the street. So I think we are meeting the intent of the zoning district. We're asking for a little special exception on meeting the exact letter of the law on the building placement. So the variance, obviously, it's the 2 buildings. I think that one's pretty clear, and we can answer any questions in a minute. When it gets to the special exception along Jefferson Avenue and that building placement, per the letter of the law, if there's any buildings around us that have building frontage within 12 feet of that right of way or the building line, or I guess it's the front lot line, not the building line, the front lot line, then we are required to have 60% of our building pushed right up to the line, just the way it's written. But there's also a 0 to 12-foot zone in there that I think is more of a building zone to encourage people to pull those buildings towards the sidewalk. And with that, what we've shown, I'll pull this one real quick because it does have some dimensions on it. And I think we need to clarify because I think Mr. Sheldon's report, this latest report that came out, we're not going to hit 60% within 8 feet of the property line, but I think we're really close to hitting 60% within that 12-foot zone. I think we're closer to like 40% at the 8-foot line. We're closer to 50% if you can include these little pieces in here that hit the 12-foot zone. So I think what we're really asking for is that we don't have to have 60% of our building frontage at the lot line or the right-of-way line in this case. And so what we had on that exhibit is we showed that if you really look at the building mass along our frontage, we're about 80% on that southern piece that will feel like it's up against the right-of-way. And we've also tried to get as much as we can on that northern building B site, keeping in mind that the single-family houses, many of them have been converted to other uses. There's also some multifamily in here along the west side. They're running ortho east and west, and Jefferson is cutting at an angle. So we're trying to emulate or be consistent with what's around us with that smaller building B. And so therefore, it's really hard to push that entire building up against the, this angled right-of-way line as well. With that said, I've already mentioned that we have a restriction point here that somewhat limits like where how the units lay out and how the building can push towards the street. There's also, we have about 10 feet from the curb to that right-of-way line for the sidewalk area, the pedestrian area. DOTE has changed some of their guidelines. So now they want like a 2-foot zone at the back of the curb, then your tree wells or your tree planters, then a minimum 5 foot of sidewalk so that people can pass beside it. So with all of that said, you're looking at more like just to get your sidewalk in about 12 feet and the right-of-way line is 10 feet off the curb. So there's several things that we think we're making this better than if we pushed it up and at the letter of the law on that piece of it.
And I would just add that in my discussions in my 2 meetings with the community group earlier this year, they were concerned about 2 items I'd like you to address. Placement of building B, which I think you've just addressed about why it doesn't come up all the way to the sidewalk. To be consistent, the answer would be to be consistent with the other buildings across the street in the neighborhood. And would you talk about the grading in the buffer yard behind the parking garage in between our parking garage, our property, and the surface parking lots behind Mr. Crawford's properties?
Sure. So
the question that was asked at the community was, is it going to be mounded or is it going to be leveled? How will landscaping fit on the dash?
I guess this exhibit would probably help depict that. If there's any questions on building B and why it's oriented the way it is,
Right.
we're willing to help answer those. So when
Which
you look at
exhibit
that,
is that? Exhibit G? Thank you.
Exhibit G.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you look at the elevation section in the bottom left corner, you can see that the grade is falling, high point being on the southern side or the left side of that section, falling towards the north as it's going towards the zoo, if you will, going down that hill. So that on that southern side, we might only have 1 story of parking garage level exposed. By the time you get to the north side, both of those levels would be exposed. And so that's really what that buffer, that screen is trying to shield or hide from the neighbors to the east. And then in the section over here on the right, section 3, that's somewhat depicting that. And that was cut through the middle somewhere as a typical. And so I think what we're trying to show here is that we can, in that 10-foot zone, we can get the evergreen trees, which what we're proposing is to, by the code, what we're required is a type B buffer yard, 15 foot. And with that, it equates to, we need 6-foot high evergreen trees. We need 11 1.5-inch caliper trees, which I think were more in the ornamental tree types. And then another 6 2.5-inch shade trees or taller deciduous trees. What we're proposing is that these 1 1/2-inch caliper deciduous trees, we would turn those into evergreen trees and try to reinforce the evergreen screen, the green wall, if you will, that would hide or shield those parking levels, the 2 levels of parking at minimum, and then eventually getting up into the building, the residential units above as far as some buffer or screening. And then the other thing that we've offered is, so with that, we were required 23 trees. We are suggesting that we do 23 total evergreen trees plus another 9, which was plus another 6 of the 2.5-inch caliper trees. So we're trying to increase the buffer as part of the mitigation for the 5-foot reduced buffer yard. Is that explain that?
Yeah, that's all we have.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I don't think I have any questions at the time. I think I'll hear from the public and Mr. Sheldon and maybe ask some questions after that.
Great.
So, Ms. Smith, you could unmute. Are there any comments or testimony you'd like to add or any questions for the applicants?
I was just wondering if there's any concern of the soft market currently in the Uptown area, as the university real estate team has seen occupancies this school.
I'm sorry, we're having a little trouble hearing you. If you could speak as close to the microphone as possible.
Well, I have my earbuds in. Can you hear me? Am I loud
Better
enough?
now.
Yeah. Okay. I just was wondering if anybody has taken a look at the softness of the market in the Uptown area. Our team this year is the first time we've seen the vacancies that we've seen across the entire portfolio up here, you know, all different apartments. And I didn't know if that was something that was looked at, and is this project something that's just going to add to the vacancies that are being seen? I mean, we're at like 75% vacancies kind of across the people that I deal with, the landlords that I deal with across the board. So I didn't know if that was something.
Sure.
I can address that. Should I stand here? Do I need to back up? Yeah. Hi, Megan. Thanks for that comment. When I met with the community in August, the same concerns Mr. Crawford can confirm. They raised the same concerns, and I did relate those to my client. I've sent them articles from the Cincinnati Business Courier that have been out in the last month or so, also addressing that issue. And the client is, I think it's fair to say, astute real estate investors, and they understand the multifamily market. And we're here today to get approval of this project. I don't know that we plan on submitting building permits next week or trying to move forward at this time. We're just interested today in getting the project approved. There's no timeline for when it's going to commence construction. And it's really, up to the individual landowner, the property owner, to decide when they believe market conditions are right for this type of project. We appreciate your concerns. As I said, the community had raised the same concerns in August, and the client is aware of them, and that's about all I can say for it. There's also articles in the Business Courier in the last month talking about record enrollment at the University of Cincinnati, your employer, and a demand for more student housing. I grew up in the Clifton area, a couple miles from this site, less than 2 miles, and it was a commuter school when I grew up, and now people want to live on and around campus. You know that as well as anyone. And my client had successful projects on McMillan Street, the Gateway Loft project that you and I've worked on together successfully, I believe, and that's moving forward, and it's open, and students are moving in. University Edge is right next door to this. This is really just a phase 3 of University Edge, and when the market dictates, that's when I'm sure it'll be built, and it might be modified between now and then. I don't know.
Peter, we're not asking for rezoning. We're entitled to do the project. We're just asking for a few
Variances.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah. Again, we're not here for a rezoning. We're well within the allowable zoning. These are
I didn't say
really
that.
Minor.
I didn't bring up any zoning. My question was just, did you have any concerns about the market? And then my follow-up will be as the university representative, to let everyone in the room know that the university may be in record enrollment, which yay, we don't have a lot of those going on right now in the country. So we're glad to be one that's kind of trajectory up. But we also, last year we had 800 vacant beds, and this year we have 400 vacant beds in our portfolio. So a demand for housing right now from our perspective is not there. And then also, I would really consider looking at affordability if you are going to move forward with this project. That is one of the things that we're seeing our students complain about. And that's why there is a majority of our students that are not living in Uptown around the campus. They're moving to Northside, they're moving to Northern Kentucky, they're moving out of Clifton because the cost to live up here in the premium finishes on these projects are causing the students to be priced out of living up here around campus.
Megan, I'll relate those comments back to the client. I appreciate them. I don't know that they're fully aware of all of that. And congratulations to the University of Cincinnati for bucking national trends and having increased enrollment. Not too from UC, Xavier University apparently is having pretty significant decrease in enrollment. And they're trying to figure out a path forward for them. So thank you.
And Ms. Smith, if I could ask one or two follow-ups. Is it your testimony that the university does not believe that there needs to be more student housing in and around the campus area?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that right now, the university has 400 vacant beds in our portfolio. So, if our students wanted beds, they have the opportunity to get them from the university housing department. I also am stating that right now, the university, if you're going to try to build an apartment up here, I would go to an affordability standpoint, because the prices for, say, the Hub or the Deacon or those types of places, the newer upscale places, our students are being priced out of. There's a small niche of students that do like those fine finishes and need that, luxury style, but the majority of our students are not to that scale, and they're looking for more of affordability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll turn it over to Mr. Crawford. Mr. Crawford, did you want to provide any comments or testimony or ask any questions?
I am here as the president of the Coreyville Community Council. I am not here as a property owner, adjacent property owner. Our concerns are what Megan has stated, the overabundance of housing at the high end level for students. We are a little concerned as a council that the developer keeps referencing the Edge, which we gave approval to several years ago, and we love this project. It's appropriate for the neighborhood, the height, the scale, and this new project they're proposing is nowhere anything like the Edge. It is much more massive, inappropriate for the neighborhood in size and mass. So I think comparing the two is a very disingenuous argument. I did have a question for staff, if it can be answered, or for the architect. Does the city take the height limit for the connected neighborhood developments from the least restrictive spot on the property or the most restrictive spot on the property? And how is that height? Which do they use to determine the height?
Yeah, sure. I'll let the zoning plan examiner answer that.
So outside of our hillside overlay districts, which this is not in, you take the height measurement from the average grade at the building line or at the street, whichever is higher. And that's really an option for the design professional or architect to choose between either one of those. That is to say, for example, if a front of a building was down lower than the street line, the average line of grade at the street, and they can choose to choose the street. For example, if a building was built up higher than the street, then you would actually have to choose the higher point for measuring that grade, the average higher point. So that is not to penalize whether it's, and the rule applies equally all the way through buildings such as this to even commercial buildings and also to residential single family. So you don't want to penalize somebody because their property drops off from the street downhill. As far as the massing, you would look at it from the average grade at the street. So
Okay.
Outside of the hillside district, again, which this is outside the hillside overlay, we do not look at the height of the rear of the building. The building envelope is not addressed outside of the hillside. It's only at the facade or front of the building, average grade, the higher of which is either the street or at the building line.
Thank you. Can you go to Exhibit 2?
Sure. So the second exhibit I showed, I believe, was labeled Exhibit E here. Is that what you wanted?
And it's been, referenced that this project is technically within the letter of the law, which it might be. But if you look at the picture, these are low-rise single and two-family houses in this neighborhood. This is a behemoth of a project, and it's way out of character for the neighborhood that it's in. And this is obvious just from the picture you're showing right now. The businesses are mostly front storefronts on single-family houses. There are a few of them in this area, but mostly it's single-family or two-family homes. That's one concern that the Corderville community has. It just is inappropriate for the neighborhood. It may be technically correct, but our feeling is that doesn't fit. The last comment would be that they did present a plan to the board on August 5th. The board did have some requests for some changes, some minor, some major. We were told that they would get back to us at a next board meeting, and then they would present to our entire community the final plan. That has not occurred. So we have not taken a vote because nothing's been presented to the community as to whether or not we should approve the setback requests or the variance requests. So we're kind of in limbo here. We had our meeting last night, which they were supposed to attend and did not. So the community right now is taking a position of neutral because they don't know what's being proposed. I think that's all I really have, unless you have questions for me.
I don't believe so. No, I don't have any more questions. I appreciate your time, your testimony here today. And Mr. Koenig, as I stated earlier,
Can I respond to that?
So,
Out the community.
I think I'd like to just stick to the procedural posture here, allow Mr. Sheldon to provide his testimony, and then give you a chance on rebuttal to respond to all the comments from the public. Yeah, or both. I noticed we do have a David Taylor here that was never checked in. Mr. Taylor, if you are present and would like to provide any commentary, if you could activate your camera for us, that would be great. Mr. Taylor, are you there? And can you hear me? If so, could you say something? Okay. Not hearing anything from Mr. Taylor. So we're going to move on to Mr. Sheldon. Mr. Sheldon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Having just explained how the height determination is derived outside of the Hillside Overlay District, I do want to also point out that the city went through exhaustive, really at the request of many members of City Council, and sponsored housing summits and an entire Connected Communities interaction with many of the community councils and with communities in general, interested parties. There were numerous stakeholder meetings and meetings had in various neighborhoods, typically at the Recreation Commission centers. And I was a part of that, so we took a lot of feedback. One of the chief concerns was, as you alluded to, some of the affordable housing, but a lot of that went into what was determined out of all of it is that we had some restrictions on density that were limiting new development, and especially more dense development, which would allow more housing units in given areas. So the transportation corridor, the T district to which Mr. Koenig referred to previously, is applicable to this. When the zones were chosen for increased density, the transportation corridor one is one where new metro fast routes, like consider them to be like express routes, were chosen, where they were really going to beef up not only the local stops on metro, where you'd stop every couple blocks maybe or every so often, and takes much longer to more kind of fast track transit that would get you from quicker from place to place. Like with aid commuting, for example, that's part of the reason it's in the T district. So is the corridor here and what Metro's increased bus coverage is doing. The other thing that was done when these districts were formed, these connected communities districts, is that in certain of them, it was allowed in the business district or B corridors, business district, and also the T transportation corridor. In order to accommodate increased density, it allowed an increase of 12 feet in the allowable height for buildings. So that is part of the reason the massing here is permissible and allowable. And it was a direct offshoot of all the studies and all the year-long connected communities interactions to determine that. So I thought that was important to note because it does allow for an additional 12 feet beyond what the base CCM zoning district would allow.
Trey, I was just going to say, I think that might be a good segue for you to, could you list specifically each piece of relief that they need in order to they need approval for to complete this project? What exactly that relief is that they're asking for today?
Sure. They need a numeric variance to allow two principal residential structures to be constructed on the same lot. Sometimes we run these variances where there's a unique circumstance to lot configuration or other unique circumstances that give rise to having two separate principal structures. And one of the important keys for us is understanding that they would be under common management, that there's not an attempt to transfer it to a different party or not have under common management, especially if they're sharing same egress or any kind of utilities or other things, which in this case is the case. They, for whatever reason, the owner of the building, that the mixed building with a tattoo parlor, I think on the ground floor, and maybe some office space or residential space up above, for whatever reason, they chose economically to hold out, and the price probably wasn't there for them. I can't really speak to that, but it's their property right to choose to, turn down an offer. So it clearly impacted at least my 10 years of reviewing plans. That impacts somebody's ability to be have a continuous building along the street frontage. So I thought that was an important factor to consider there. I know that this project came in for a coordinated site review, and so since then I've had interactions with the representatives here for the group, especially Mr. Pearson, and discussed some of this. They had to be far enough back with the parking garage, what he called the podium of it. It had to be back enough that it wasn't anywhere like right onto the other neighbor's property. And that's a really deep, for the tattoo parlor lot, it's skinny, but it's deep. It goes back in there significantly. And that affected where they could possibly even begin to start the 2-deck parking thing. From what I understand, it makes some logical sense if you look at it that way. They really couldn't start bringing the whole thing forward without. So that's one thing that I took into consideration in that particular relief, the numeric variance. The other second item of relief that's required is a special exception for less than 60% of the building facade to be built to the front line.
So in that instance, I'm going to just reference. So we're talking about these dotted red lines here, right?
Correct.
That you see here. So 60% of this frontage would need to be built directly to the lot line, as opposed to having some areas of relief here and having this building sort of angled differently. Is that right?
That's correct. The unusual circumstance here a little bit, at least that I find, is that normally when a part of a building, so David, for example, some of the buildings, at least across the street and so on, normally we think in very Euclidean blocks. I mean, not all of Cincinnati's that way. It's an older city. Things just kind of grew organically. but we normally think in Euclidean terms like a block, right? It's a rectangle and so on, straight lines. And the code really doesn't, the code, when it was written, it can't address every single possible option. And in this instance, I just note that it just states where any of the other buildings are up against the line. And here you have basically some inconsistency between where where David's hovering right now. For example, that building, a lot of it's, there may be a corner of some of them that come out toward close to the Jefferson Avenue, but they're built with the lot lines. They're built with the sides matching the lot lines, not built square to the frontage. And so it creates offsets where it's, most of the buildings on here are similar to how they've done building B rather than building A. A few of them follow the bevel, like down there, right near that, just below where your cursor is. A few of them do that are newer buildings follow that bevel, but most of the older buildings that are along that street clearly are oriented to their side lot lines that don't have a beveled front. They have a straight front. But that is correct. Part of what I understood from in the coordinated site review, there was some mention of the Department of Transportation and some standards that they have. They want things to look as pretty as possible where they can with new development. When a new developer comes in, the Department of Transportation Engineering and Urban Forestry very much encourage tree wells, like a tree lawn, and to beautify the area and leave it, especially in a more pedestrian kind of oriented, somewhat pedestrian oriented neighborhood like this. It encourages people to have a pleasant experience on the street frontage, walking to and from down the street. So I understood that at least some of the reasons for locating the building back further were to accommodate a full tree lawn, and then also a wide enough sidewalk that you have plenty of capability for people to be walking in both directions on the sidewalk. Now, some of the older parts of Cincinnati don't have that. You have to say, excuse me, and kind of step back and let someone through because it was built many decades ago, or even a century or more. In this instance, it's a brand new development. They're starting with a blank slate. And so I think they, at least from what I understand, the form followed function of trying to allow these this tree lawn to be established and also a wider sidewalk. There is some change to the massing in that there's some inset so that the building, did not appear as one. I don't want to call it a government building, but it doesn't appear as one solid mass across the front as much insofar as it's got some variability to offsets and the materials. On that note, some of that very much seemed to be an attempt to somewhat comply with the 2016 University Impact Area Solutions Study. And lastly, I'll note, I didn't really have the knowledge of this from a zoning standpoint, but there are also apparently overhead electric lines running along the development side of Jefferson that have minimum clearances, and I didn't remember mention of that during the CSR, and the applicant has inserted that in their application that those lines could not be met if that the clearances from those lines could not be safely met. Again, that's not a zoning thing, but if it's a functionality of rules for electric utilities or for the building code, they've asserted that that's another aspect that led them to pull this building back some from property line or right of way. Lastly, there's a special exception to allow a buffer yard with a depth of 10 feet rather than the required depth of 15 feet.
And again, just to be clear, we're talking about the east side of the building here.
Yes,
This
correct.
red dotted line, okay.
That is correct. From what I can ascertain, similar relief was granted for previous phases of the development to the north there to allow that as well. In this instance, once again, their parking is not it's not a loss of above ground parking or a surface level parking lot. Here we're talking about a garage that goes sort of subterranean, at least toward the middle of the building. And then, as they put it, it daylights more and more as you go northward along the building. That was explained that not only were they attempting to do that, just like they were in the previous to allow enough parking here, but also had the constraint of having to pull that parking back behind the 3228 property, the holdout, as they refer to it. On that point, can concur that they have exceeded the buffer yard planting requirements. Instead of smaller 1.5 caliber trees, which might end up just being like a ornamental crab tree or something. If it's that an inch and a half is not that big, they're having substantially larger trees and many more evergreens. I was aware of Eastern red cedar trees. For those of you who aren't, they're really hardy native trees. They're the kind of the ones that you see when DOTE, when ODOT, when the Ohio Department of Transportation, or KDOT in Kentucky cuts away through the shale and the coke, the limestone and all that for a cut in the highway. That's the one, other than some grasses, that's the one tree that somehow manages to survive sticking up out of what just seems like rock. So they are pretty hardy trees. So I understand that that's what they have selected for. When I consulted the USDA and forestry regs on that for species in Ohio in this range, assuming they're properly watered, they tend to grow up to 40 to 50 feet at maturity, is what my understanding is. So based on that, as long as, again, the landscaping is maintained, which is a requirement of the zoning code, that landscaping and buffer yards around parking lots to be maintained. So that's the only caveat I have in here, is that perhaps an irrigation system should be put in to make sure these trees survive if they are healthy, and do that according to the agriculture department. They can in this zone grow to 40 to 50 feet of maturity, which would help to substantially screen out the parking deck component of this. I can't speak to where it would come up to as far as the windows on what amounts to the ground floor extended back, but it seems to me if the trees are maintained and they live, they will cover most of the parking deck.
Okay, great. Thank you, Trey.
Further questions?
No, that's all I have. Appreciate your work on the staff report and your testimony here today. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to the applicants here. This is your opportunity to respond to anything that Trey has said and anything from the public. I will ask, since I think we're running against time here a little bit, I think this room is reserved out, if we could move right from any rebuttal comments to final statements and try to do that in
I'll
10
cut that short.
minutes.
We don't have any rebuttal.
Okay.
If we do, it's contained within my closing statement. I'd just like to make a statement to conclude matters. We'd like to, first of all, thank Mr. Sheldon. He worked very carefully with myself and Ryan Pearson and a couple other members of our team. We've been working on this project for quite some time. As Mr. Sheldon mentioned, we went through a very lengthy, detailed, coordinated site review process. We learned a lot through that process and incorporated that into our plans. I did meet with the community board back on February the 4th, as I said. We filed our application July 21st. I met again with the community's board on August the 5th. And I think there were 7 people in attendance. I can give you their names if necessary. But I will apologize to Mr. Crawford for any misunderstanding. My takeaway was, and what I thought I made clear was, the application that was before them on August 5th was the one that we filed on July 21st. I had these boards with me. I had the application with me. I gave them all copies. I had 7 or 8 copies of the application, and I distributed those. And I said, that is the application we are going forward with. They made comments about the buffer. They made comments about the building B and how it's angled and not flush to the street. And the way I thought I left it was, if we would going to make any changes, I would get back in touch with them. In fact, we did not make any changes. I think Ryan explained and Mr. Sheldon both explained why building B is appropriately not up flush to the sidewalk or the street. But I do apologize for any misunderstanding. I never heard from the community after August 5th saying they placed this project on an agenda. If I was on an agenda, I didn't know it. I have a reputation of over 40 years of being punctual and honoring my commitments and my appointments. And if I was supposed to be there last night, nobody told me. I never got a notice. I never got an email, a phone call, a letter. And we didn't make any changes to the plan. So there really was nothing more to talk about. Furthermore, you'll see on the application, the very first line, I added community Coreyville/Cuff. I did that because Cassandra Maines told me it was also in the Cuff district. That carried over into Mr. Sheldon's report. I never contacted Cuff because the Coreyville people said, you don't need to contact Cuff. This is not in their district. So I never contacted Cuff. And so I want to be clear about that. As far as we're concerned, the project only had to be presented to the Coreyville Community Council. And I asked a further question about their meetings, their monthly meetings of general membership. I said, do many more people show up than are here today? That's what I asked on October the 5th. And they kind of laughed and said, no, not really. Occasionally there might be a few more. So I thought I had all of the community, the active people in the community in the room back in February the 4th, and then again on August 5th. So since we hadn't made any changes, and I think we explained today why we didn't make any changes in a credible manner, that's why I didn't get back in touch with them, and I never heard from them. So we would just respectfully submit this on the record for a decision as soon as practicable. We respectfully request that the hearing examiner approve numeric variance to allow 2 principal residential structures to be constructed on the same lot in accordance with section 1423. As a footnote, I would add, we had discussions before we filed our application, I believe with Mr. Sheldon, maybe with Emily A. House, I'm not sure, Stacy Hoffman. Anyway, there was some discussion whether or not we needed to file 2 separate applications for 2 buildings, and it was concluded this was the best way to go, and that's why we did building A and building B together. The second recommendation that we support and respectfully request that the hearing examiner adopt is to approve special exception for less than 60% of the building facade to be built to the front lot line to allow approximately 60% of the building facade to be built plus or minus 8 feet from the building line. And that's in accordance with section 1409.21 of the zoning code. And the third request is the special exception to allow a buffer yard with a depth of 10 feet rather than the required depth of 15 feet in accordance with 1423.13.
And I would just like to clarify on that second one.
1409.21.
1409.21, we're requesting to put plus or minus 50% or 60% within that 12-foot zone. We don't have 60% of the 8-foot line.
Is that clear?
It is at this point. It's from these, from the drawings, it's tough to do percentages of
We would have to go to
increments.
measure it. Yeah.
And part of it is offset, part of the building has insets to it.
Right.
That's right. So
just so I'm clear, 60% of the building will be set back 12 feet from the front property line.
let's go 50%. 50% of the frontage will have building within 12 feet of the lot line.
And the other 50%?
It would be green space. We don't have any curb cuts or parking or anything up against there, so it'll be open. Yeah.
So it'll be 50% was closer to the lot line
Within 12 feet.
within 12 feet.
Lot line. Yeah.
Okay. Anything further?
Um,
I think we do.
Well, I would just say that the approvals that we're requesting are consistent with the 2 cases in 2011, 0041, ZH 2011, 0041, and ZH20120062. Both of those had special exceptions for building placement and buffer yard depths. That was University Edge 1 and 2, and you could call this University Edge 3, but we call it Kettering. I don't have anything further. Thank you all.
I think we'll leave it at that. I want to thank you all for your time and your testimony here today, including those online. Thank you for joining us.
Is it possible to ask? Is it possible to ask a question or have a rebuttal to what was just said?
Yeah, so I apologize, Mr. Crawford, but the public speaking portion has ended. It really is the way the rules are written. The applicant who has the burden of proof gets to have the last word. I know it doesn't seem equitable, but because they have to prove the case and not you, they do get the last word on this. I do appreciate your testimony and your time. We're going to leave it at that. I'm going to review all of the evidence and all of the testimony and the staff report and make a decision on this particular application. I'm going to put that decision in writing. As soon as I finish that decision, I put it into a PDF and I'll email it to everybody who's in the hearing here today. So you all will have a copy of that really just moments after it's complete. That decision is appealable to the Zoning Board of Appeals if you provide notification within 30 days of your intention to appeal. If you have any questions about any of that or have any questions after you receive the decision, feel free to reach out to myself or Cassandra Manus. Otherwise, I think that's it. Any questions about the process right now before we adjourn? Okay. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for their time and their testimony, and have a wonderful day. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.